The chamber was buzzing with a restless kind of energy. Television cameras were rolling, journalists shuffled their notes, and aides whispered nervously behind their bosses. This wasn't just another committee hearing, it had already been teased as the clash of the week. Former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo had been invited to testify on foreign policy decisions, but everyone knew that he wouldn't just sit quietly and answer questions. Pompeo was famous for his bulldog tactics, dominating with his booming voice, cutting into his opponents with sharp one-liners, and using intimidation as his shield. But today, across the table sat Representative Jasmine Crockett, a freshman Democrat who had quickly gained a reputation for being unflinchingly direct. She didn't yell. She didn't posture. Instead, she wielded logic like a blade, quiet, sharp, and devastating. The moment the chair recognized her, Crockett adjusted her glasses, flipped open her neatly organized binder, and leaned into the microphone. "Mr. Pompeo," she began, her tone calm, "you've repeatedly claimed that your foreign policy decisions kept America safe. Let's test that claim with some facts." Pompeo smirked, leaning back in his chair as though he were preparing to swat away a rookie. "Congresswoman, I've dealt with adversaries far more intimidating than this committee. If you're suggesting I didn't keep America safe, I'll be glad to remind you of the actual record." The room chuckled nervously. Pompeo had landed his opening jab. But Crockett didn't blink. "Good," she said simply. "Let's start with January 2020. You authorized a drone strike that you said would deter future attacks. Can you tell us how many retaliatory strikes occurred in the following 3 months?" Pompeo straightened slightly. He hadn't expected her to begin with precision. "Congresswoman, that strike saved American lives. Period." "That's not the question," Crockett replied, her voice as cool as ice. "How many retaliatory strikes?" Pompeo shifted. "Several. But, so, instead of deterring violence, the strike provoked more violence." "Correct." The silence in the room was deafening. Cameras zoomed in. Journalists scribbled furiously. Pompeo opened his mouth, but Crockett cut him off. "Let's move to your dealings with North Korea. You boasted about historic negotiations and said the regime was closer than ever to denuclearization. Yet the intelligence community reported the opposite, that nuclear production increased. Were they lying, or were you?" Gasps rippled through the chamber. Even Pompeo's allies winced. He leaned forward now, his booming voice rising. "You don't understand global diplomacy, Congresswoman. These things take time. You can't just demand results overnight." Crockett tilted her head. "So your success was simply buying time while the threat grew stronger?" Pompeo's cheeks flushed. He reached for his water glass, buying himself seconds. The former secretary was used to playing offense. But Crockett wasn't giving him that luxury, she was dismantling his record with surgical precision. "Let's try another example," Crockett continued. "Under your leadership, the State Department abandoned career diplomats, silenced dissenting voices, and hollowed out expertise. Morale hit historic lows. Do you deny this?" Pompeo slammed his palm on the table. "That's a smear. We streamlined the department to make it effective." "Effective for whom?" Crockett shot back. "For the American people, or for your personal political ambitions?" The crowd stirred. Even the chair of the committee leaned forward, sensing history in the making. Pompeo had come to dominate. Instead, he was being cornered, point by point, by a freshman lawmaker whose weapon was not volume, but logic. And the more he tried to roar, the smaller he looked against her cold precision. Crockett flipped another page in her binder. "Let me end this section with a simple question, Mr. Pompeo. Do you believe the American people were safer at the end of your tenure than they were at the beginning?" Pompeo puffed out his chest. "Yes." Crockett raised one eyebrow. "The intelligence assessments, global surveys, and the spike in global anti-American sentiment all say otherwise. So either you're ignoring the evidence, or you're redefining the word, safe, to fit your legacy. Which is it?" The room fell silent again. Pompeo swallowed hard. And for the first time that day, he didn't have an answer. Pompeo shifted in his chair, his eyes darting briefly toward the cameras. He was a seasoned player, he knew optics mattered as much as arguments. But the optics weren't good. A freshman representative was pinning him down with simple, undeniable logic, and the audience could see it. He cleared his throat, forcing a smile. "Congresswoman, it's easy to sit here with hindsight and criticize. But leadership requires making tough calls. I made them, and I stand by them. Crockett leaned in. Her voice didn't rise, but her words cut deeper than any shout could. Leadership requires accountability, Mr. Pompeo. And so far, all I've heard are excuses dressed up as toughness. The audience murmured in agreement. Pompeo tried a new angle. He straightened and spoke with exaggerated patience, as though lecturing a student. You know, Congresswoman, foreign policy isn't about idealistic checklists. It's about protecting American lives. That's what I did. Crockett's response was swift, calm, and devastating. Then explain this. During your tenure, global terrorist incidents against Americans increased. Anti-American protests surged in Europe and Asia. And alliances, our strongest safeguard, were frayed to the point of breaking. If that's your definition of protection, then perhaps we need a different dictionary. Pompeo opened his mouth, then closed it. His jaw worked, but no words came. The cameras zoomed in again, capturing the rare image of him at a loss. Crockett turned a page in her binder, her composure unshaken. Let's also address your political ambitions. Reports suggest you made decisions with one eye on international headlines and the other on domestic polling. I'll ask directly, were your choices motivated more by America's security, or by your own future campaigns? The room erupted in whispers. That was the question everyone had wanted asked but hadn't dared. Pompeo bristled. That's an insult. My service was always about this country, always. Then prove it, Crockett said. Her voice was icy calm. Point me to one measurable improvement in global stability that resulted from your policies. The silence stretched. Pompeo blinked. His lips tightened. But no clear answer came. Crockett didn't let the pause linger too long. She pressed forward. You claim strength. But real strength isn't bluster. Real strength is earning trust abroad, maintaining stability, and ensuring Americans don't have to pay the price of reckless choices. By every objective measure, trust, stability, safety, your tenure left us weaker. Gasps and murmurs filled the chamber again. Even members of Pompeo's own party avoided his gaze. He tried one last counterattack, his voice rising with frustration. Congresswoman, with all due respect, you don't understand the complexities of global leadership. It's easy to cherry-pick numbers and sit in judgment, but you've never been in the room when life or death calls were made. Crockett didn't flinch. She closed her binder slowly, folded her hands on top of it, and spoke with quiet authority. You're right, Mr. Pompeo. I wasn't in the room. But the American people weren't in the room either, and they're the ones who live with the consequences of your decisions. My job isn't to repeat your talking points. My job is to measure outcomes. And the outcome of your leadership is clear: diminished trust, heightened danger, and a legacy of instability that others must now repair. The weight of her words hung in the air. Pompeo's face tightened, his shoulders rigid. He tried to summon another defense, but nothing came. The logic was airtight, the record undeniable. Crockett leaned back in her chair, her voice cool as steel. So the next time you talk about keeping America safe, Mr. Pompeo, remember this: safety isn't about looking strong on television. It's about real results. And history will remember not how loud you spoke, but how much weaker you left this country. The chamber erupted. Some clapped openly, others whispered fiercely, while journalists tapped furiously at their keyboards, knowing the headlines were writing themselves. Pompeo sat frozen, caught in the glare of the cameras. For the first time in years, his trademark confidence seemed cracked. Jasmine Crockett had not raised her voice once. She hadn't needed to. With nothing more than cold, undeniable logic, she had silenced one of Washington's most aggressive figures. And everyone in that room knew it.